you've made, you said $6 million in coaching.
Yeah.
Over how long of a period of time?
It's been 8 years.
8 years coaching.
So the very first coaching package I sold, it was 3 months long. It was $180. It was $60 a month. We met every single week. Your first few clients are going to probably be people that know you or are 1 degree away from you.
You have the choice to be the premium version of something or be the Walmart version of something.
And I think that needs to be a conscious decision if you are a business owner.
How important is it to create content as a coach?
In today's day and age, like having a personal brand is a non-negotiable. What is influencing them while they're making their buying decision? I want something to be there versus them just making that decision like aimlessly on their own.
Okay, you want to start a coaching program or you want to start coaching. What qualifies somebody to coach?
If I was investing in anything in the very beginning, it would just be...
Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
I don't listen to a ton of podcasts myself. Or I love podcasts,
Yeah.
but I mean like podcasts I subscribe to, it's probably 5 or less, and you're on that list.
No
The
way.
Jereshia said podcast.
I'm like honored. I feel like when you create a lot of content, I understand why you don't consume a ton. The fact that I'm in your top 5 or only your 5.
Yeah, no,
Really
and it's part of it is just obviously it's very it's a way you're very conversational. I feel like I'm like in a room with you. I'm guessing your Tesla is probably a good studio.
Yeah.
I mean, the sound dynamics go ham.
You know, it goes ham, and I'm glad we're in the room today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I feel like we are in a time where people are more exposed than ever, that they could kind of, I think one way to put it is monetize their mind. A simple way to put it is to get into coaching.
Yeah.
And I like starting the podcasts with a very direct definition of something. And I just straight out of the get-go, I wanted to ask you, you said $6 million in coaching.
Yeah.
Over how long of a period of time?
It's been 8 years.
8 years coaching.
Yeah.
And what qualifies somebody to coach?
Proximity to a problem. And I feel like a willingness to, if you have a heart to teach and just to be of service, I think you naturally can end up being a really effective coach. But I think proximity to a problem, proximity to a problem, probably like empathy for another human being. And like a willingness to teach and just like hold space with somebody. Like I think it's like this dynamic between like the head and the heart. When you can do both well, where you have, again, proximity to some problem, some area of expertise, and you can like hold space for somebody's humanness while they're like going through the process of figuring something out. I feel like those are 2 really good qualities to make an effective coach and to have a really effective coaching dynamic.
How did you know that this was like, you spent time in like corporate?
Yeah.
And yeah, how did you know that coaching was a thing?
I mean, I didn't know it was like an industry.
Yeah.
In corporate, I think like looking back, I mean, my grandmother and my aunt raised me for a majority of my life. And my grandmother was a math teacher, and I loved when she would take me to school with her. She like was a teacher in a pretty rough neighborhood, but like I loved her dynamic with being able to connect with these kids who, you have no idea what their morning was like or what their evening was like before they came to school. Like school was their safe haven. And my grandma was like a grandma to them. So like, I think seeing that teacher lens early on, like I always wanted to be a teacher, but I just didn't think they get paid enough, to be quite honest. And then, so I felt like that was a huge influence on me and part of maybe this teacher component of me that shows up in coaching now. And then when I was in corporate, I called them my personal board of directors. They were like my creative parents. They were like my mentors, my guides. And I had like 8 to 12 of them at any given time. And I look at them, they were like my first coaches. So I think that when I look at how I got and stumbled into like this digital marketing world and this coaching world, I feel like those are 2 of probably the biggest influences that have led to me being the type of profession that I am now. And so I would credit it to my grandma and like the mentors I had when I was in corporate, because they really coached and guided me, sat down with me. I'm like, I really want to understand how this, I worked at a utility. We did not get paid off the product that we sold. And I just really was fascinated by like, how do we make money? Like, how does that work? People don't think about natural gas and electricity until it doesn't come on. It's very rewarding work, but the mentorship they gave me. And I feel like those 2 things coupled together, and especially in today's market in the last few years, like being a coach, an effective coach, I think requires you wearing kind of multiple roles now, being a teacher, being an advisor, being a coach. and understanding those roles. I think that the consumer expectations have evolved and matured where they assume they're going to get a multi-dynamic experience now
Sure.
versus maybe the traditional role of what coaching has been 20, 30 years ago.
So good. What was the first problem that you had close proximity to when you first transitioned then into coaching?
Yeah, I mean, like I had a business in college. That's what paid for my senior year of school. So like people kind of knew me from that. I started the e-commerce business. I was selling bandage dresses
Oh, wow.
to girls who go to frat parties. I had frat party customers and I had like women in Dubai customers. Like it was a very wide range. The dresses like sucked you in and lifted you up. That's what the girls wanted. So when I think people kind of knew me from that. And when I was in corporate, I was in a leadership track and I was just really like progressing up the ladder quite quickly. And people just started asking me like, how are you doing this? Like, it seems like whatever you set your mind to, you just accomplish it. So the very first coaching package I sold, it was 3 months long. It was $180. It was $60 a month. We met every single week. And it was like just helping people accomplish their goal. So it was really just more of like, how do you clearly identify what it is that you want? And then what are the action steps we need to take to get there? So it was very like generic.
Yeah.
But people were like, you just
That's so good.
are out here hustling and making it work. Like, just show me how you're doing that. So that was the first problem that I sold. But I think proximity to problem, as I continue to learn more about business and what people were willing to pay for and pay for with more ease, I'm like, Jay, you need to specify on the type of problem that you do. And then over time, I started to notice this commonality with just like all the different random lived experiences I've had.
Yeah.
And saw the commonality thread in that. And that's kind of what shaped, I think, kind of what I'm known for now.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I feel like you're a coach to coaches.
Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of coaches, service providers. It's expanding a little bit now since I've come back from sabbatical, but yeah.
That's awesome. You're so smart. Like crazy.
I called my grandma on the way here. I was like, Grandma, wish me luck for my interview. She said, baby, you're very intelligent.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing this for, but you're going to be great. So
and one thing even more so, you're not just very smart, you articulate really well. And there are smart people that you could consume and feel dumb for listening to them.
Yeah.
I actually, no hate, but Jordan Peterson, when I listen to him, I feel dumber because I don't know. I just do.
And I think the tonality is really important. I think also we're in I feel like that approach actually worked really well in like 2016 to like 2018. But I feel like now like people your consumers are super sophisticated. Like they don't need anybody else layering on more shame or amplifying the insecurities, because like we're in an era and everybody's heightened awareness to like their flaws. So I'm really appreciate that. That's something that you feel when you consume my content, because I'm like, I think that there's heightened anxiety right now, depression right now. Like we don't need somebody else we're listening to make us feel like even worse.
Right.
So I'm like, speak possibility into what you're doing.
Which I think is a great like marketing strategy. And we'll get deeper into how you've marketed your coaching is work really hard to make it easy for you to be listened to.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I feel like, because they're so easy to consume. I know you're putting in the work, you're putting in the thinking work and the process work, Hey, department fam, wanted to take a brief break from this conversation. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is that, did you know that 75% of the people that watch this podcast on YouTube actually aren't subscribed, which is a high chance that you're not subscribed. So number one, I want to say thank you for listening or watching the podcast. And number two, if you can hit that subscribe button, that would be amazing. The second thing is, if you are an entrepreneur, content creator, or somebody looking to make money online, I want to encourage you to come to this online event called the Content to Cash Challenge. This is a special 5-day event that's going to give you access to the system I use in my business to make multiple 6 figures with my content. If you've been desiring to either get your business and brand more exposure, grow a YouTube channel, whatever it is when it comes to video, I would encourage you to jump into the Content to Cash Challenge. We'll be sure to post the link to the challenge down in the show notes or the description. And I want to encourage you to jump into the VIP experience. This will give you access to a 1-hour Q&A call every day of the challenge. This will guarantee myself to answer a personalized question you may have. So I'll see you on the Content to Cash Challenge. Now let's jump back into the conversation.
And therapy. I mean, I think that's also why consumers are now maybe feeling a residue they no longer want to, experience when listening to that type of content. I mean, like I feel like that type of content is how many of us were raised. At least my household, it was tough love. So even when I first started even creating content, I very much delivered from like I think I still had enough empathy and compassion in my delivery, but it was very much from this tough love mentality of what I was raised in. When you start doing some therapy and you start healing some stuff, and it's like, don't talk to me. I don't want to be talked to like that and talked at like that. And I don't know. I'm just glad that that's something that you're even noticing for yourself. And I think it is a very effective marketing approach, especially depending on the caliber of client that you're looking to attract. But people, the awareness is high. People already know kind of like, you don't keep breeding and amplifying somebody's insecurities.
What's the difference between a therapist and a coach?
One some therapists can prescribe drugs. They can, like label and name and diagnose. I think there's a very fine line when I think therapy is more retrospective. I'm generalizing this a little bit depending on the type of therapist you work with, and really unpacking, that's interesting. Like what caused that? Where is that rooted from? Is that our mother wound that we're dealing with? Is that attached to, is that trauma just kind of built up in your body that now is being expressed? Versus I feel like coaching is very much more like forward focused.
That's so good.
And let's move you forward versus let's unpack the past. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's still some unpacking, but that's kind of like the line there. And I think when it gets too dark, too deep. I mean, we touch on stuff in coaching, but I'm like, I think there's a very fine line between like, you can't come in and diagnose or label, or it can get touchy, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, no, I love it. You mentioned, because I have so many ways to go, but I just want to make sure this is methodical for the listener. I like to make the conversations kind of like masterclasses, and if it's too much all over the place, and so I'm just trying to think like you're listening to this or watching this because you feel like you can start coaching people. You started with a group coaching program.
Yeah, that my very first, it was like a cohort of 6 people.
Cohort. Can you just define, because some people don't even know what a cohort is.
Yeah, cohort is just, it's 6 people. They all start on the same date. They all end on the same date. Very similar to like if you were to sign up for a class at college or a class at school, we're all starting at the exact same time. There's a group of people. So that was like the first like touch I got into it.
Yeah.
And then after a while of doing that, I was like, okay, are you going to treat this like an actual business, or is this just like fun money?
Yeah.
And I was like, let me actually try to like treat it like a legitimate business. And I was like, okay, what's a more advanced problem that you could solve so you can actually charge, a couple $1,000s per client?
How did you justify that original price when you first started?
I mean, I thought the 180 or the 3,000.
The 180. $180 for 90 days.
There was no justification. I mean, somebody literally sent me a DM after watching one of my live streams on Facebook. And I didn't know this was like a potential thing to do. And somebody said, well, can you just like coach me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. I think I might have like actually went through and calculated what my hourly rate was for my salary and maybe just like added a little bit more. So I think I don't even know. I might have done something like that back then. There was absolutely no justification.
Crazy. Like mine, like when I first did mine, it was like a year. I'll meet with you weekly on Zoom group for $2,000.
I mean, how did you justify it?
I don't know. I actually was afraid to charge more. Like I think I wanted to charge $5, but literally I got 2 people to pay me the $5, and I refunded them because I didn't feel.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, that dissonance there. Yeah, but no, I don't know if I like calculated my hourly rate or just looked at like what's my water bill and my light bill and what would it be like to cover that. Like I don't know. There was no.
So you just
structure.
Put it out there though that like, hey, if you want, and I mean, because like I think there's a huge important correlation between like the personal brand that you're building and like you're really good on messaging, and I want to unpack that, and just like being a content creator. Like, how important is it to create content as a coach?
I mean, I think that in today's day and age, like having a personal brand is a non-negotiable. I mean, even if you're working in corporate, like some of my clients that are still doing executive coaching and helping people get jobs in corporate, like some of these companies now, part of their hiring decision-making criteria is like, what is your digital presence? Because if you're going to be in a VP or a higher level role where you're going to be out speaking and whatever, like your brand is part of what we're paying you for.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just, I feel like it gives you a competitive advantage because one, most people in corporate, most people in general are not going to take the time to do it. So you putting a little bit of extra effort in it is going to make you stand out. Like when people are considering you, or even when I get referrals now, like they're going to Google me.
Yep.
And it's like, if they're picking me over somebody else, it's like, what is influencing them while they're making their buying decision? I want something to be there versus them just making that decision like aimlessly on their own.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a non-negotiable, and I think it's a non-negotiable, and there's really no reason not to do it in today's day and age.
Good. A little bit tactical in the sense like because people should, let's just say we're giving like kind of a framework, like let's just come up with a cohort. How long do you want to deliver for a certain group of people or a certain amount of people? Did you just put that on social media and send out a couple emails and like?
Oh, no. This was like before I even really felt like I had like a digital brand. I mean, like I was making live streams during my lunch breaks on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Like answering questions that people had, or just like sharing what I was going through. But like my first 6 clients came by way of like personal relationships. Like they knew, like they might have followed me on Facebook.
Yep.
And I think that we underestimate that.
Man.
Like your first few clients are going to probably be people that know you or like are 1 degree away from you. So I was in like another leadership cohort for like political action committees or something. 2 of the clients came from that. One of the clients was my cousin. One of the clients was the girl that did my hair. And like, so they like watched my content on Facebook, but they had some sort of personal connection to me.
Yep.
And I think that we just underestimate that. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying go start, hosting Tupperware parties and like pitching all your family members because they may or may not be ideal clients.
Right.
But there's probably I think that follow the path of where you had the least resistance and pay attention to what people are naturally coming and asking you for.
It's good.
No need to manufacture a problem to solve. Solve the problem that people are kind of already have associated with you and you already have a perception around. So that's like how I got my first 6 and really like dipped my toe into the space.
And what was your main objective in that cohort?
See if this is like a real thing. Like I think the concept of like people paying me for coaching did not feel like legitimate. Like that felt very like abstract. I was like, let me just see what happens. Like there was no real, I gotta pay bill. Like it was just like, just to see, it was like an experiment to me. I mean, I'm an engineer by trade. It was like, let's just see how this goes. Can I help some people? Can they like help somebody? Because I loved like being able to help people do that anyways. People would come to my house, we'd whiteboard. Like I was the friend that you would do that with.
Yeah.
So the only objective was like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And like, will people actually just pay me to spend time with me and tell them the stuff that I'm already like reading and doing on my own? Dope.
Yeah. No, I love that. I just want like, I feel like you're giving people the permission to start just to see like.
That's it.
And what's cool about cohort, like the thing about me is I committed a year to
that's a long commitment.
To 55 people. And
but you had an audience.
I did.
I feel like that, like your dynamic, and I think even still, if you have an existing audience that you're selling to, I feel like you guys have an interesting dynamic as well, because there's always, I feel like you already have like this, maybe, let me know if this is actually true for you, of like some level of pressure because people already have an existing perception of you because of like
100.
Yeah, like you're Omar,
right?
You know, like they know you, they've seen you online.
But like what I'm going through right now is something I feel challenged with is messaging because, you know, my audience is although it's a probably you could say decently sized, and I'm known for the fairly right thing.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of people that are just starting from 0, or like the idea of content creation is like, you know, I'm going to create content and one day make money. And then I have the entrepreneur who had something to sell and they're like, if I can just have more exposure, it's game over.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's what
You're in like in a contextual nuance transition right now.
100. Oh. And
fun times though.
No, it is. But could you help? Because you are really good at dialing and messaging. Like, and I think something to consider is if you're trying to sell a program or you're trying to sell something and the market responds, usually go back to the messaging. Would you like, or doesn't respond? Like, I don't know why people aren't like.
I think messaging is like the forever undercurrent, messaging and perceived value. I mean, perceived risk. Like, I think that when you are selling anything, and especially right now, and there's always ebbs and flows in the economy. If you understand, well, I understand macroeconomics at like a golden retriever level, okay? But like
that word macroeconomics is Doberman level. I'm just saying. Like,
my ability to articulate
I've never heard those words put together, but okay.
But when you think about, it's just like, where is the buyer sentiment? And I feel like you can feel that just by like talking to your family at home and your grandma at home. Like where is people's perception of their spending dollar right now? Pre-COVID and like during COVID, even though we were going through a global pandemic, world was shut down, the government was sending out checks, okay? When I was back home in Detroit, they were at Somerset Mall. There was a line wrapped out and down the street in front of Gucci, Louis Vuitton, MCM. Like, people, even though the world was in a crisis, there was still like this, I have disposable income and I'm about to ball out.
Yeah.
And how that impacted our online space is that there was a lot of hope of like, I'm rethinking my career. I'm at home right now. If you're selling during that time, like you had everybody's attention. Like, there was this general consensus of there's possibility. I want to spend my money and I want to see what's available.
Yeah.
That's a very different market to sell in than what we are in right now.
Sure.
And we are in a market right now where people are more very discerning. You know,
and they've already maybe probably been burned or
100%.
Yeah.
That's like a yes, 100%. Like, they are not maybe as naive.
Yeah.
They're way more discerning. It's not to say that they're not spending money, but they're not spending it as aimlessly as they were during like that 4 or 5 year period.
Right.
And that's like, that cycle happens over and over again. And I think we're just on the other side of that cycle right now. And when you are dealing with that, where it's like people are thinking about, why is my avocado $3.99, which is ridiculous,
Yeah.
you know? And then when I think about, okay, that is the default mentality of the majority of my buyers right now. So let me just like categorize that. Then the other thing is at what sophistication level and really like what income bracket level do you want to be selling your services to? Like, who is your ideal, your most qualified lead?
Can you talk to the person that's like everyone?
Yeah, the reason why I say that, and I'm trying to articulate this as best I can, like, there's this larger overarching, like, how do people feel about their money right now? Are they closing their money tight, they're more discerning, or are they kind of loose-witted and free-flowing? We're in like the kind of tight era right now. The second thing is like, what is the sophistication of buyer I want to be selling to? I might be selling you the exact same thing. I might have 2 products. They both could be for you. But if one is priced at $50 and I'm like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to sell in stories, it's $50. The barrier to entry and the perceived risk that you have associated with that might be low enough where even if it's not like a super specific problem, it's like, oh, how do I feel about just like throwing out $50? Cool. It's an impulse purchase.
Yeah.
Versus maybe if you're selling something for $5,000 and it's for a 2-month coaching program or whatever, you know, the same person is going to use a different type of discernment when making both of those decisions. The $50 one, it might be an impulse purchase, whatever. I've been thinking about wanting to sell more on my stories. Cool, I'm gonna just buy it. Even if I never open it, I'm not gonna sweat it. $5,000, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna really look, is this actually solving a problem that I have right now? Is the contextual nuance there for what it is that I actually want? So even though you might, like, though I could sell both offers to you, but when it comes to a messaging and how you position yourself, you really need to think about what is the perceived risk that your ideal client is processing through when they are making a buying decision as it relates to the offer that you're putting in front of them. So it's not like, oh, I sell to everybody. I want you to, like, I feel like that's a very like elementary digital marketing like thing that gets taught of like in our space, but there's not enough people that are like, okay, screw who you could sell to. Yeah. I want you to think about from a marketer standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, what is the level of discernment in your buyer that you want to be marketing to? And that really depends on like the sophistication of the problem that you're solving, the specificity of the problem that you're solving, the contextual nuance of the problem that you're solving. All of those factors is what will influence like how much you'll be able to get paid and the caliber of client that you're going to have to be consistently like creating content for.
Right.
Is that?
No, it's so good. And
okay.
And I think there's like, cause I have context on everything you're saying because I've been now 2 years in.
Yeah.
I want to highlight the fact that you said if you're selling something for $5,000, somebody is like really think you're getting somebody's attention.
Yes.
Which you just said, if somebody buys the $50 thing,
it's an impulse purchase.
It's an impulse purchase. They might not even look or open up the thing, which is not going to even help your cost to even sell it in the future, which I think is just like something to consider, because it's like one reason to charge, you know, a decent amount based on whatever problem you're solving is so that you can get the attention of the people.
100%. I think what you're saying is like spot on.
Yeah.
And I think that just when you as a business owner, I feel like you don't, I'm definitely speaking at like a master's degree level right now. Because I feel like what I'm talking about and making this decision, if you can make it early on, great. But normally, like you said, you've been in 2 years. Like I feel like it's difficult to know what type of business model you want to be known for until you're probably making $100,000 to $300,000. Like first thing you need to do is just like learn how to sell. Yeah.
Which I was like, there's so much of what you're talking about, like listening and like understanding.
Yeah.
Like, it's sales.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, so right now we're like, okay, you want to start a coaching program or you want to start coaching. Okay, you need, I hope you don't feel overwhelmed, but you need to consider your brand and create content. You need to be a content creator.
Yes.
You need to put out stuff.
Well, I want to say that.
Okay,
we are coaches who create content.
Coaches who create content.
Versus, because I feel like when you say content creators, like they start acting like influencers. And
they do that.
It's a hot mess.
And but then you got to grow in sales.
That's the first skill set you need to figure out.
Bang.
If I was investing in anything in the very beginning, it would just be sales psychology, understanding what is influencing how somebody's making a buying decision, like understanding people's perception and what they perceive as risk and what doesn't feel like a risk. If you can understand that and close somebody, your business model might be all over the place. It'll influence everything else you're doing. Yes, 100%. Yeah. That's the first skill you really need to nail.
Yeah. And like something about like charging too, I've learned is I have felt the permission to charge more when I started becoming a premium person.
Yeah.
You know, like
what did you mean by that though?
Like I joined a mastermind for $55,000 and
you start walking a little different, baby.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You walking down the street going into Chick-fil-A, like they don't know how much I just dropped on myself.
Yeah. And yes, it made me become a different person in that regard. And then I also got front row access to what a $55,000 thing looked like.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, I was overthinking this part and this part and this part. So, I mean, because I'm big on like, if you're a coach, you should be you should be coached. Like, don't follow a coach who isn't coachable or being coached. And but like being able to charge more, the confidence to even charge, because if in sales, if you say the price and your tone changes, something's off.
You've broke. Sales is just a transference of trust.
Yes.
If you don't trust in what you're selling, and if you don't trust in the number that's coming out of your mouth, like they're gonna feel that. And I think that when, if you don't have proximity to maybe those wealthy moments, I'm like, go out and start doing that. Like go to the fancy mall in your town and just like go in to, the Jimmy Choo or go into the Saks, like go into the stores and just like be in the essence of it.
Yep.
Notice how you feel when you're in those stores. Allow them to give you the complimentary Perrier, like get the Amex card just so you can go to the lounge and like it just expose yourself to it. If that's without realm, like find the richest neighborhood in your area and go to an open house.
So good.
Like just see, like you will notice like what you might wear, how you might dress differently for that experience. Like notice yourself shift into the identity of being that person.
Yep.
But I feel like exposure therapy is really good in that regard.
I love that.
And if you need to build your confidence, like do what you got to do. Put your red lip on, get your earrings, like put your lingerie on, like do what you need to do I'm speaking to ladies on that one, but whatever you need to do to kind of like activate that sense of self, in whatever way you need to, because it matters so much in sales.
Yeah, and I hate to because sometimes it can become a superficial part.
Oh, for sure.
Because obviously there is people that
be out here doing it for the gram
hard.
Facts.
But no, I mean, I bought an Audi 2 years ago, and I've always driven a paid off Toyota.
Period. Okay.
Period. And then, you know, I bought my first watch, and just something about this click every morning.
It does something.
It does something.
I feel you on that. I'm with you. It does something.
But then again, putting yourself exposure therapy. I love that, because I mean, the amount of conversations I've had around things that, because I put myself, I don't know, just the exposure part. And I think there's something to say that you have the choice to be the premium version of something, or be the Walmart version of something.
I love what you said, though. It's a choice. And I think that needs to be a conscious decision if you are a business owner. Whether you're selling coaching, services, consulting, products, it doesn't matter. Like, I think product-based businesses do a better job of understanding this, because they're like, on what shelves do I want to be on?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I think it's more naturally ingrained for them to think about, like, where in the bracket do I want to be positioned? I feel like us as personal brands, many people don't really consciously think about that choice until much later on. And I think it is a choice. Like, you can be the Amy Porterfields and like the Julie Solomons and the Brooke Castillos, where it is high volume. And that is like first time purchaser business model.
Right.
That is, you can make millions doing that.
Yeah.
You also can make millions being like, you know, the opposite, the flip side of that, where you're primarily selling a more premium priced offer, but you're selling to a much lower volume.
Yeah.
And I think the everyday person, like, I think like the regular girl from Detroit like me, like, I feel like there's so much more money to be made as it relates to what most of us truly, truly want. Like, most of us are doing this for a lifestyle upgrade.
Yeah.
We're doing this to be able to, like, the owner's intent of the business is not necessarily to like hand it down to the kid,
right,
or to have a traditional exit. If you're not having a traditional exit and you're not intentionally trying to build a legacy brand where like 3 generations from now we're still going to be running this business.
Yeah, it's like hyper key man risk.
Yeah.
And we're okay with that.
Yeah, but just like that is I think that not enough of us, and more of us don't just claim that like you're doing it for the money.
Right.
Like, you're doing it so that you can take home as much profit as possible, so that you can move your family to a new zip code, send your kids to the certain school, upgrade to the Audi, get your Cartier and your Rolex on.
Have all the time in the world with your kids.
All the time in the world. Exactly. Like, you're doing it for spaciousness, and you're doing it for your net worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that needs to be a conscious choice, because if you are trying to play operationally and marketing and selling the game of, I want to have a traditional exit and have some VC or private equity or for some other family to buy my business, you're going to run the business totally differently than if I'm doing this so that I can pick my kids up from school, from soccer every day. I can, you know, be there and have like slow mornings with my baby at home. And so that I can like live the lifestyle I want, because it's a profit-driven business model versus a making the big money once I sell business model.
Right.
And I think that needs to be a very conscious choice. Like, what is your owner's intent?
Yeah.
And then play the model that aligns with what it is that you want. But it's important to name it, because otherwise, especially in the online space, you'll lose yourself very, very fast. And what I see happen a lot with clients is that they're like, oh, I'm trying to play the mass volume model. But really what they want is like, they want the spaciousness and they want the money model.
Yeah.
You can make money in both, but it takes different time and operates differently. The profit margins are different. And then they like look up one day and it's like, why do I want to burn down the business that I've created? I hate this thing that I've created. It's because like you never made the choice. Like, you just did what you thought you should do, or you did what everyone else was
your perception of
the
what everybody else
perception
did.
Exactly what everybody else was doing. So I'm glad that you bring that up as choice, because it is a choice. Like, where do you want to play in the marketplace? Yeah.
And I have actually, because I built a lot of my presence on Think Media.
Yeah.
I didn't know how important word choice was. And it was cool that I got exposure and that people learned from me. I think at a surface level place, to build a value-based brand where people think about you, they think they get so much insight, and then, you know, they love your content because it's super helpful. It's kind of why you even reached out once you found me, right? And
you solved a very specific problem that I was trying to figure out too. And you were just like, dope. And I'm like, he seems cool. Like, he actually seems like somebody I would want to like kick it with.
Yeah. I found though, Think Media was very that, like, 93% off this YouTube bundle. The cheap was intertwined for a lot of the word free.
Yeah.
I've removed that from my vocabulary when it comes to marketing, because even if I'm doing something for free, I don't want you to jump at the opportunity because it's free.
100%.
So if I'm doing a workshop or a web class or whatever, I'm doing this call, I'm doing this webinar. I want you to figure out it's free once you jump into something, but you moved because of the messaging or the value you saw. But it's just so important. And I know this could be a lot to take in. And this is why people actually consume the podcast multiple times, because it's like this part they really like hitting, and then they come back. That's what's cool about podcasting. But you can listen to an episode as a different person.
Yeah.
And get another insight, get more insight out of it. I don't know,
sure.
just for whatever it's worth. Okay. That was a lot.
This is good though.
One-on-one versus group.
One-on-one is where I started making. And when I did the $180 $180 for the 3-month situation, where I sold my first like $3,500 package was private one-on-one. And I mean, do you want me just to go through the journey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I prescribe people who want to get into it. I think it is, you can go both ways. I like doing the one-on-one because you do it for the discovery and for learning, because the best type of group coaching programs, you should come with a very educated assumption of the people you help.
100%.
And that comes from helping a lot of people for a little bit. I think one-on-one,
I double tap and co-sign that 1,000%.
Cool.
Like, I think that one thing that I notice with myself is that there's a lot of unconscious competence about what you have. It's like people are like, oh, how are you doing this? You're like, girl, I don't know. I just wake up and decide to do it one day. And it's like, no, there is a process that your brain is going through, but you do not have a conscious level of what your competence is. And working with one-on-one really allows you to like slow down, because you're in close proximity with another individual. They're asking you very specific questions. You're able to notice the patterns of what this individual needs and the process in which they're asking for it. So you're like, oh, I was giving them step 7, and because of my unawareness, I totally forgot about step 1 and 2. I just assumed they knew that.
Yeah, right.
No, I need to connect all of those dots for them.
Right.
So when people start transitioning into more of a premium, priced or just on the higher end of whatever their industry or market is, I agree. I think I always recommend they do a handful of private one-on-one, because one, it's also like you're going to be able to help them obviously get tremendous value, but 2, you're going to learn the messaging. You're going to learn like they're going to share things with you about their beliefs, their insecurities, all of that they may not say in a group call.
Right.
So it's like perfect market research for you as well. But I agree. I think like do the first like 5 to 10 private one-on-one, and also build your own sense of self-confidence and like charging more, being able to confidently say that, like you working out your own kinks too around like what your sales process is and what your actual delivery process is. Because when you get a group of people, like we've all been in class where we had a terrible teacher.
Yeah.
They just show up and it's like, oh, read this book. And then the next day, like what they're testing you on isn't even what they told you to study. Like that's what group programs can go wrong when you don't have a methodical process that you're trying to actually guide this group of people through. So when you work with one-on-one, you can start to notice the patterns, and those patterns become the process that you guide you guide your groups through once you are in a cohort format. You need to develop the curriculum.
It's really good. You got, I think, 3 Ps in that. You said the pattern was the second one. The problem, and then identify the pattern that will lead them to the promised land.
100%. There you go.
Something you do really, 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 really well. And I think something your content strategy is just very live, very unedited.
Yeah.
Very demure. But yeah, and I find it fascinating because you unlock so much, because if you have the right messaging, and I think live streaming or very unedited versions of you talking, I mean, the conversion goes crazy.
100%.
And you're not even big on sales calls.
No.
Yeah, like
I mean, I started on sales calls.
Yeah.
But like now I
mean, you close so much people in the DMs.
I close pretty much 100% in the DMs.
Okay, let's just go kind of like 1, 2, 3. Let's start with like your live stream or content kind of framework?
Yeah, so that was the game. That's how I started, you know. And the reason why I started with live is because I didn't know how to create content. Like I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to like what cameras. Like that was like foreign to me. And again, like the engineer brain of me is just like start with the minimum viable product. You have an iPhone, you have the internet, you have Instagram, you have Facebook. Like just start with the least barrier of entry where you don't have to buy anything. You already got this stuff and just like use what you have. So that's where I started with live stream. And that felt very more natural to me. I'm like, I don't know how to copyright. I don't know how to like market how these people are saying you're supposed to market. I know how to talk. Like I know if I can talk for at least 15, 20 minutes, I may not be like super structured, but if you listen to me long enough, I'll be able to get the point across and be able to understand what it is that you need and be able to connect those dots.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that's how I made like my first million was off of live streams primarily. And live video was very much the core of my content strategy. And I think too, like, even though people like, oh, like I'm not going to go viral on live or like I'm not getting a ton of reach on live, like that's not the point.
Right.
Because again, you're not an influencer. You're not building I was not building a large volume model. Like I needed like 10 people to say yes at $3,000 or I needed 6 people to say yes at 15,000. Like I don't need hundreds of people every single month to say yes to me.
Good.
So if I have a live stream and 20 people are on, but 4 of those people are qualified leads that are going to turn into $10,000 clients, that was a $40,000 live stream. Like balls to the wall. Like, I'm good. I'm winning.
Yeah.
So I just did what was easiest for me. And I'm like, and it's live. So I'm like, nobody's going to have this expectation for it to feel like Good Morning America.
That's
like
so
I don't need to be like hair laid, makeup beat. Like it's a live stream video. It's like a FaceTime. So I can commit to that every day.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think by choosing that route, it made you a better communicator.
For sure.
Because you gave yourself the permission to know that this wasn't going to be edited.
Exactly.
I got to roll through like, let me say that again. And like, but that people don't realize something you just, like, as you're talking, I'm realizing that if you're selling something, I don't like to use the word expensive, but more high ticket.
Yeah.
Live has to happen at some point.
Yes.
So either you create crazy content and then somebody's hopping on a live Zoom call with a salesperson and a human to human, you're just putting that part in the front end of things and therefore making the sales process later to be less needed for you to be live.
You articulate that so well. Because I think that like when you are buying, again, anything, we're going back to what we mentioned earlier of like a higher discerning buyer. Like when you bought that watch, you probably went into the store. I mean, I don't know if you did or not.
Yeah, you get on the wait list.
You get on the wait list. Like, like when I bought my first home, like you physically go to the house. Like when I bought, now my Tesla was the only thing that was expensive that I'm like, this is wild. I can't believe I'm buying this online and just like having to go pick it up. But they had a different dynamic going on with like existing perception and like built trust. Yeah. But anything pretty expensive that you've ever purchased, there was some live component.
Right.
And I think that like, again, knowing where you are in the marketplace and knowing what type of buyer you're dealing with, like, because honestly, when you're dealing with a higher touch, premium price, lower volume, it's a relationship-based business model, not a transactional-based business model.
Right.
So you're dealing human to human. Like, yeah, I can solve this problem. My expertise and me being able to solve the problem is like cost of entry. But then from there, they're picking the person, because they could buy this problem from me or buy it from somebody else. And it's like, well, who do they feel most comfortable around, or whose values feel more aligned, whose identity they, connect with.
Yeah.
Like that's what's going to put them over the edge. So 100%, like I feel like live video, you don't have to be perfect. And I love how you articulated that, because it just gave me permission to just, stumble and figure it out without this pressure of like, people are expecting me to look and move and be robotic.
Can you speak to, I feel like there's a potential limiting belief, and that is, well, if I'm giving all of it away on the live, or how do I distill the information and make sure, because why would they buy if I'm giving it away? Can you speak to that kind of?
Yeah. I mean, like in the beginning, don't hold back. Yeah. I mean, like I want you to treat your content like church. When you go to church every Sunday or on Wednesday or whenever you go, that the preacher up there is not like, let me like try to pull back and not like, share the love of Christ. Like, like I think that there's a lot to be learned.
Good. I've never heard that you need to make that a thing. That's true. It's true. Yeah, they're
they're not holding back God.
Yeah,
like,
right.
and even if you're not religious, study. If the religion of Christianity or whatever the religion is can get millions, billions of people to come to church every single Sunday and get them to believe in the concept of God, like I feel like church and like that is one of the best places to learn messaging and sales. And not saying it from like a manipulative, like,
yeah, no.
you know, like
I actually was told because I preached before I was coaching.
Oh yeah, you've been meant for this.
Yeah, and somebody was like, "You're already selling. Like you're making it you problem aware, solution aware
every single day,
like the whole thing.
You do the whole shebang in one sermon.
Yeah,
and I mean, think about that. Like you're dealing, and then they go back out into the world. The enemy comes in to try to destroy and distract, and they show back up, and you got to like start the process, not over again, but kind of over again.
Sure.
And I'm like that is how I think about my content. My content is my church. I want you to come here and get your milk. I want you to get your meat. I want you to feel a sense of like renewed faith, a sense of possibility, a sense of restoration. Like I want you to have that because honestly, when you're dealing with and selling to the type of...
There you go. That's so funny. Okay.
I'm like, okay, hold on. Somebody up in here, the spirit.
Did you
then caught us?
You said, because honestly, that's what I remember.
I'm like, but I don't even know.
No, you come to like your content is your church.
Your content is your church, and like and especially in the beginning, like don't worry about like giving away too much. Like there's a lot of people who go to church who never end up serving in the community, who never end up becoming a pastor or a preacher or whatever. But like, so like I know that I've helped thousands of people through my free content who will never pay me.
Right. Like
that's good. That's that's what it should do.
Yeah.
My goal is just to get a small percentage of them. And so I think that that's a mentality. I would say that how can you make that relevant for you or make that make sense for you?
Yep.
But the second piece is that I think as you start to mature in your understanding of marketing and develop your skill set and understanding messaging and positioning, my content really is speaking at an identity level of like, let me teach people how to think versus me telling them how to do it.
Yes.
And what is valuable to somebody who is a more discerning, it's valuable across the board, but especially people who are on, I feel like a more sophisticated buyer. And I say sophistication, not because some people are dumb or some people are smart, but in the sense of the impulse purchase versus the discerning buyer.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with a more discerning buyer, think about what they view as value. Like a lot of what they view as value is this person introducing a new perspective to help me think differently, not just giving me like the tactical thing to do.
Right.
So that's really the goal of my content is just shift a perspective, introduce a new belief, like get somebody thinking differently about something they might have been convicted on. And it's like,
And that is real. That's actually like the depth of influence that has to change the way a person thinks about a thing.
Yes.
That's influence.
Yes. And that's when people like, oh my gosh, your content is so valuable.
Right.
Why? It's not because I like gave you this, here's how to like install the light bulb and now you were able to go do it. It's like, man, I'm thinking totally differently about how I'm approaching this, how I'm approaching my decision making. And that's really the goal of my content is like, how am I helping somebody navigate their own decision making around whatever it is that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm not giving them the process of it until they pay.
It's good. It's kind of, I mean, I like before we hit record was I was telling you about Ruby turning 6 and I have one more year to shape her view and that one way to influence is not to attack the action, but to ask her, why did she do that?
Yeah.
You know, and that'll probably stick more than me just being, don't do that.
100%. Because now she's going to be a more critical thinker.
Yeah.
Versus like, daddy told me not to do it. Let me act out of fear.
Right.
Which you probably are, maybe that's happening too. Like, I ain't trying, daddy coming around, hold on. But like, it's that critical thinking piece. Yeah. And that's really the goal of the content.
Yeah. And I think something else that I think about when it comes to the idea is you're in the deep end and they're just dipping their toes.
100%.
So to think that everyone's going to watch or consume every bit of everything you put out, like they're only going to get one thing actually from the 3 points that you brought.
If that.
If that.
They might just remember how you made them feel.
Boom.
And it's like, dang, I don't know what just happened. But that is so true.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, again, going back to the church analogy, like people still come back every single Sunday.
Right.
And like, how long have they been preaching the Bible?
Yeah.
longer than we've been alive, like a very long time. So it's like 100% is true. And it's like people are consuming so much on a daily basis. You know, you think like, oh, they watch the whole thing, or like you said, they know all my stuff. And it's like, even if they do, even if they've, like, people who hire me, like they've been consuming me for years at this point now.
Mhm.
Like, I've listened to every episode on the podcast.
So
There's
good.
250 episodes. They're
Wow.
like, listen to every one. And they still hire me because there is still I want you to help me specifically do this thing. And
Right.
I don't want to have to piecemeal your 250 episodes together and try to guess what the framework is. I want it to me in the most simplest, digestible way so that there's no guesswork anymore.
Right. That's really good. Okay. No one goes on social media. I like to say no one goes on social media looking to buy something.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So how somebody buys your coaching has to be methodical.
Yeah.
And can you speak about the importance of the environment that you create for people to buy?
Me specifically?
I guess specifically and generally.
Yeah. So when I think about the sales environment, like you just said, like when somebody raises their hand, I look at sales as like I'm just making invitations for somebody to take the next step. And my job in the sales process is not to get you to say yes. It is just to help you make a decision. That is it. Like that decision is no. That decision is like, man, I thought my problem was what you saw, but it's actually I need to do something else. Like that's my only job in sales, is to help you make a decision and to give you an invitation to take the next step. And I think that when I learned to approach sales that way, it reduced this like frantic pressure of like, oh.
Which will influence how you sell.
Oh, yeah. And the whole dynamic.
Just remove yourself from the outcome.
Yep.
And just be okay when it's not the right fit.
Yeah, because that's because you don't want to be working with a not right fit client, especially in a premium offer and usually for a longer time frame, like just for the money. Like it's all money ain't good money, and you got to like learn that over time, like what money is for you and what money is not. But that's like when I think about sales and that dynamic, I think I approach it from that lens.
And I have found if you have to drag them in, you have to drag them around.
That's like, you need to put that somewhere. Do something with that. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like my online presence or like the ecosystem that I'm trying to create with sales, I mean, like I do you want to talk about when I used to do calls, or what would be more helpful, I guess?
I actually think, what's the most you've sold with DM sales?
I mean, I think
like
I've been
product-wise, not overall, but like the price of a product.
Oh, probably the most expensive. I mean, most expensive is probably like $75,000.
75,000 through the DM.
Through the DMs. I mean, like that is like somebody.
So I want to talk about both. But let's go zoom.
I sell bigger packages through DMs than I have through sales calls.
Wow.
But I mean, that like came with time and came with like, practice, and came with, there was already existing relationship and a lot of other things there.
But most people, what really people can do is they can talk about, you can live stream.
Yeah.
With a call to action to a Calendly link.
That's the easiest way to do it.
That's the easiest way to do it. And then, but on that call.
Like, how are we leading and structuring that?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that when my job, again, once somebody books that call, is the first thing that I'm trying to do is there's a perceived risk that this person is already walking into the call with.
That's good.
I'm trying to like, how can I bring down their barrier of self-protection as much as possible in the very beginning? Because especially in today's market, like people are being sold to constantly. There's a million ads every time you scroll across something. Like they're heightened awareness of like person about to sell to me. And I normally start my, sales conversation, or if I was on a sales call, with really just like Omar, thank you so much for being here and for trusting yourself to even, explore the opportunity of working together. My job on this call right now is just to help you make a decision. That is it. So like I try to do what I can to just like remove the barrier or dilute that barrier. Normally I'm giving some form of gratitude for them and to them. That's very genuine. I'm like, thank you for trusting me.
Huge. As
even part of this decision-making process.
Wow.
And my only job right now is just to help you make a decision, whatever that is, like no pressure. And I think that is like one thing there. The other thing that I always do during sales conversations, whether this is through DM or whether this is on a sales call, is like I want to be able to effectively articulate what their problem is, probably better than they articulated it to me, or they know how to articulate it to me. So like this is like, I normally have people fill out applications at this stage, or we're chatting via DM for me to like understand what their problem is. Like I want to make sure that, do you even understand what their problem actually is? Because if you don't understand their problem, but you are here trying to confidently sell them a solution without that congruency. One, they will pick up on that. Or two, they'll have like buyer's remorse or regret once they get inside because they're like, dang it, like
This wasn't what I needed.
this is not even what I needed. And this person didn't even take the time to like understand whether or not it was what I needed. When you're selling mass volume, you don't really get the opportunity to do that as nuanced because it's just based off your copy on your sales page or whatever. But also the stakes are lower when it's a lower ticket offer. So like those are like probably two of the biggest things that I try to do in a sales conversation is like unarmor them with speed to intimacy as much as possible. And then secondarily, it's my job to be able to effectively articulate what their problem is and to ask the questions if they're not, because some people, when they're dealing with an issue, they a lot of the time don't know how to articulate what the issue is.
And you need to not prove, but you do need to show them that you've been thinking about this more than they have.
Yeah. Like imagine like even if you're going to like a car dealership and they're like, oh, like, let me show you like the newest model of this and that. And like, they're like running off all these features that you do not care about. You're like, bro, can I fit 3 car seats in this thing?
Yeah.
Not like, is there like 4 settings of like heat and cooling on my seats? Like, you're not even listening to me.
Right.
And I feel like that makes people feel unheard. It's like, you don't really understand what my problem is. Like, I don't want what it is that you're selling. So I think like that is just, again, it establishes trust. It does speak to credibility. And I think it's like, it's an ethical way of selling.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe an ethical, it's like, it's in selling with an integrity.
Yeah.
Because I understand what your problem is. So I have confidence knowing that the solution that I present to you is the right one.
Right.
And if it's not, me talking to you and figuring out, like actually you need something else, like I feel a lot better being able to then just refer you to somebody else if I know, or say, hey, I'm not a good fit.
Yep.
Usually whenever I do that, though, they want to hire me more. And I'm like, no, like legit, I'm not.
There's something about not feeling thirsty for the sale. And they're like, actually.
I'm like, maybe I need to maybe my problem's something different.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I really think that like, go do this and like implement that. And then like, it, see what happens and maybe come back. But those are really the 2 things that I'm trying to do in any sales conversation, regardless of the medium in which the conversation is taking place.
Fire. And then, so we talked about content and marketing. We talked about sales. Now it's like they're in and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I want to get to like the power of testimonials too, because people don't think about this. But like, if you're starting a coaching thing, you need to know when somebody gets a win, and you need to document this, so you don't have to sell as hard later.
Yeah, but what you said, know when somebody gets a win, is like the money, because a lot of the time people are selling, hey, I do coaching. They're selling the features. You get 12 calls. You get me for a year, you get access to all of my stuff. Like that is a very like low level proposition that you are making. If that is like that's the value add or the positioning that you're leading with to influence somebody's buying decision. When you start raising your prices, like people, they care less about the features and they care more about what is the measurable outcome.
Yep.
Like, how do I know if I'm winning?
Right.
I love that you said that, because like, if you're selling a more curriculum-based program, it is very, very important, I think, to be able to attach a program promise to it. Like, what is that measurable outcome? How do I know whether or not I put, points on the board versus like, oh, I learned marketing.
Right.
Great. Versus like, I was able to, make my first digital dollar, or I was able to. Dude,
mine, the one I joined, Myron's, was like a 6-figure day.
There, boom. Like, that is very clear. You'll know when that happens. Like, but also too, you think about that with Myron. He said like, okay, I'm going to promise you a 6-figure day. And you said earlier it was 55,000. Now you're positioning, like when you're making the decision, it's like, you're telling me I can double my investment.
Exactly.
And then I now learned this enough where I can do it again.
Which is is that price juxtaposing? Is that the term?
Don't get me lying.
Oh, price juxtaposing is like when the cost is compared to something else.
Yes.
It's our job to put it against something else.
100%. Like, you need to give it context.
Yeah. Whether it's the cost of achievement or the cost of not doing something too.
Yeah. The cost, I think, of the ROI and the COI, the return on investment and the cost of inaction.
Bang.
Bang, bang.
That's really good.
But having it positioned against something is really, really important, because otherwise it's just like, we don't know the value of something until we're comparing it against something else. So you need to have something there to help influence what somebody's perception actually is.
Right.
Because if it's compared against a $500 thing, oh, the $55,000 is expensive. versus it's 55,000, but you're going to have your first 6-figure day.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's like the stakes are high, but like the return on investment is ridiculous.
Oh man. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, and I've been able to multiple, I mean, it's dumb.
Yeah.
But like fulfillment in the sense of, because I think when I started, there was an insecurity to not know if I was helping or like, and so that's why I was teaching so much. And that's why I was actually over delivering, which I learned that when you over deliver, you overwhelm.
Yeah.
And then that causes inaction.
But you're in the beginning, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, you legitimately don't know. You don't know where the parameters are. You don't know where the boundaries are. Like you don't know what's too much. You don't know what's enough. Like you're figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
I think like doing that in a low stakes environment. I mean, you committed to a year. Commend you for that. Like, doing it in an environment, like let it be a testing period. How else were you supposed to learn that?
Yeah.
Like you got to go through it. I think that the more you've clarified what the problem actually is, like, 6-figure day or whatever it might be, it's like, okay, with that in mind, what does somebody need to be able to implement? And what are the decisions that somebody needs to be able to make in order to achieve that outcome?
Mm-hmm.
And then that can help influence like when's too much and what needs to be included and what doesn't need to be included.
Yeah.
But normally you need to know what the target is. And most people's programs don't have targets. It's like they're either selling a lifestyle, they're selling you a dream, they're selling the persona, they're selling maybe a more generic problem,
mm-hmm.
but they're able to still get the buyers because of maybe the brand or the presence of them. But the more tangible the outcome, I feel like the more lifetime value you're going to get from customers too, because they know when they're winning. And when they win with you, it's like, well, I want to keep winning with you. I already trusted you to get in here. Now my trust is even higher because like, look at what we've been able to do together. Like I want to continue staying with you.
Right. That's really good. And because like I actually started with a year and then I offered a 90-day thing. And then I realized that if I'm not going to teach A to Z or coach people on how to start a thing or how to go from this to this place, then I'm more or less teaching the skill.
Yeah.
And skill is, I think, immersion and exposure to a skill allows you to grow in it. So that's why I actually made like the hard decision to like, I'm going to keep it at a year. And it's because this is a journey and a skill thing. But the more I've been helping and coaching people and them getting like results, and the results I like to see, like money results.
Yeah.
People asking them if they sell stuff. And some people come that they don't have a product or an offer. Some people already have something, but more people are buying it. But I almost have to like tell people, like, so how much are you going to make off that deal then? Because they're like, Omar, I got my first client, or Omar, this person reached out. I'm like, okay, how much are they?
Well, most people don't lead with money. Like,
no, for sure.
Even again, like this is a relationship. Like usually when people are sharing their wins or whatever, they're sharing it how they naturally would.
Yeah.
It's our job to maybe like ask that clarifying question.
Right. Which is why I wanted to like, because it's something I want to be more cognizant of, is the documentation of the wins and the testimony.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I used to do is like celebrate the crap out of it. So like when I was running like larger scale group programs, like when somebody made their first 200K, like they would get an award, like we would celebrate the moment. And I think that when you can create like, or like when my clients like paid their program off in full, they would get like a paid in full hat, a paid in full hoodie. Like we're going to acknowledge you for this win. And when we attached a celebratory aspect to the win that I wanted to measure, like it made it a lot easier to get those testimonials or for people to say like, hey, this actually happened, because they want the acknowledgement. Yeah. And I want to be able to celebrate them. But it made it also clear to the clients to know like when, again, how do I know if I'm putting points on the board? If you say like when you get your first $1,000 client or your first $10,000 day or whatever it is, like then you join the 10K a day club, or I don't know, I'm just like making this up.
Yeah.
It helps them know like what the target is, and then there's a moment to celebrate it, and then it's a win-win across the board.
Yeah. No, that's really good. We talked about a lot. Let me see my phone. So you say like number one skill is the skill of sales. And then would you say number two is communication? Or what would you
I feel like communication is like, I guess that is a skill set though, like of learning how to articulate yourself and feel comfortable articulating yourself. I feel like when I say communication, I'm hesitant to like label that, because I mean, coming from corporate, and I don't know how many people listening to this are just like really good code switchers. Like their customer service voice went to Harvard and they know how to like switch in and switch off. I feel like most people, when they at least when I work with clients, they think of communication through like that professional
Yeah.
lens. I'd say sales, and then I would say messaging. Like, I feel like if you know how to sell and you know how to properly articulate what it is that you're doing in meeting your client, like being able to understand where they're at, where their discernment is at, and be able to articulate at a way that meets them where they're at, like you'll never be broke. So I feel like those two things, like for me, I feel like that's why I've made so much money without prioritizing emphasis on like building a really beautiful, polished, traditional personal brand. Because I didn't really start investing and being intentional with like the visuals of my personal brand, or like I feel like really investing in branding until like after I made $1 million. But sales and messaging was what made me money. Yeah. Despite like, I think some of the more traditional things that I was told that I needed to have. Like I didn't have a website until I had made maybe $150,000, $200,000. Like, so I didn't really leverage those assets until much later on in my journey.
That's good. And then I would say you know, most of us start like just solo dolo.
Oh yeah.
And then you realize, like you mentioned earlier, like building a coaching business. Like where are you at with like the types of people that are on your team, whether virtual or in person?
Yeah, now is different. Me post-sabbatical is very different than me pre-sabbatical. So I took a year off, and that was like a planned sabbatical, something I really wanted to gift to myself after like 7 years of business. And it was kind of like my Sabbath year. That's
so good.
And when I was beforehand,
biggest insight. I know it's hard of taking a year off.
I mean, I feel like I'm still figuring that out. Like biggest insight, I don't even know if there is one. I mean, like surrender. It's safe for you to surrender. Like I think that even though I had made millions, I had like there's nothing left to prove anymore. Yeah. Very much. All of my success was very much fueled from this resentment and like anger, if I'm being honest. Even though I'm a very bubbly, kind, happy person, but like, you know, my mom left when I was 2 years old. I didn't meet her for the first time until I was 25. Wow. I left my dad very early on and moved in with my grandmother and aunt. Like I struggled a lot with like self-worth, feeling like I'm enough. You know, like when your parents choose not to be active roles, I'm like, even though they say you're not the issue, like there's still always is something of I'm needing to prove something. Yeah. And I think also just like being biracial, it's like I'm never like white enough, but I'm too white for the black kids and too black for the white kids. So like I feel like I've always just been this kind of like chameleon. Wow. And I'm like, who really am I? And I think most of my life I knew how to assimilate, and I knew how to be, I was a very good chameleon. You throw me in any environment, I'm going to figure out how to adapt, how to cope, and how to succeed in it. My therapist said that's why I'm actually a very good coach. Do
you know the Enneagram stuff?
Not like well enough.
I wonder if you're a 5. I mean, I don't even say, I just know I am, where it's called an investigator, where you search, you go to the end of a thing. Like you want to
sometimes those assessments are hard for me. Yeah. Because I'm like, I'm like, I don't know if I was trained to be that way. Sure. Like being an engineer makes me like very just like I mean, I think I've always been curious. That was a good degree for me to get because it really sharpened those skills. Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay. No, I love that. I'll give you the bar. You said it. There is safety in surrender.
Yeah, there really is.
Which is a very like, I actually think it's a kingdom paradigm. Like it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. If you want to be the first, or if you want to be the greatest servant, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Like the kingdom's upside down. Yeah. And when you think about surrender, you actually think that you make yourself vulnerable, when in all reality, you're creating safety. Yeah. So good. That's powerful.
So like pre-sabbatical, I mean, like I was living life, loving it, making multi-7 figures a year, but I was very, very lean. Because again, my owner's intent was, how do I leverage the profit of this digital business to build my personal net worth? That it was the primary goal. I was not trying to win awards on Inc. 5000. Yeah. I was not trying to win best place to work. Not to say that I was a trash boss, but like that wasn't the goal.
That's good. I think that I love that. And I feel like that's a phrase you've owned is owner's intent. I haven't heard that from somebody else, but I love it.
Yeah. I think you gotta just know what you're doing this for. Yeah. So back then, we had one core program that was called Leverage. It was $18,000 a year-long program. We had maybe like 70 to 75 clients in it per year. So I had 2 past clients that had gotten really great success. They were our program coaches in it. So they were contracted. They still ran their own businesses, but they would host some of the coaching calls and like support inside of the community.
I love that.
I had a podcast editor. I had a video editor, both contracted, retainer or project based. Towards the tail end, I had a content writer that would take, so I'm good at talking.
Ooh, I need this.
Yeah. So
that's what I need. Because I don't have a content issue.
No, yeah, like,
but it's
but there's a distribution probably
distribution
issue.
And then just tabling things away. Or like I need to carry out that thought that just came out of sometimes just coaching. It just comes out like, oh, you felt it. Like,
so my job was to be the talent and to talk, and it was the editors, the video editor, and the content writer's job to distribute it onto the platforms that we were on. I think that is probably one of the biggest mistakes personal brands make, is they try to delegate their messaging. Like delegate the distribution of your messaging.
Dang.
Delegating your messaging, I think, is very, very, very difficult to do until you are at a place where like either you can spend way more money on a marketing team, or until you've like
that person knows your voice.
Yeah, they need. But also, like, so much of our personal brands are changing so fast. So the messaging of your business is evolving. And I think that we try to delegate it prematurely. Like there's a reason why like Coca-Cola can have that. They've been saying the same thing for 100 years. You've been saying the same thing for what, a year and a half? And you're like expecting this stranger to come in and like nail your messaging as good as that's your job.
Yeah.
Until there's been enough of like enough history and enough repetition and enough consistency that we know that once we hand this off, it's so dialed in and there's a permanence to it that like that one person can't mess up the whole thing.
That's really good.
So I had the content writer. So my job was to talk, do my live streams. My live streams got turned into podcast episodes. Those live streams, the content writer would pull out the gems and turn those into carousels. And then our video editor would chop up my live streams into reels. That's when reels were like early stage reels. I don't think that's effective today, but at the time it made sense based off of where the platform was at. And then I had 2 full-time team members. I had somebody that ran my marketing, like a marketing manager, and we had a client success manager, client success was responsible for all client touch points from the moment somebody enrolled to the moment they offboarded, and retention and renewals. And the marketing manager's job was to manage those 3 contractors, and just like overall support with more of our like marketing campaigns and marketing efforts. So that was like 2 full-time team members, and then a lot of project-based contractors.
Yep.
And that was the case for probably the last like year and a half before I went on sabbatical. And now, I mean, like post-sabbatical, my business model is totally changed now. I mean, like it's me and like I hire an assistant like for a couple hours a week, or like on a project base, but that's just because my load this year, like in the past like 4 months since I've been working, or 5 months since I've been working again, is like I'm still figuring out I'm like rebuilding my business with babies in mind.
Yeah.
Before building your business in your 20s, early 30s, I mean, like all I had to really care about was myself. So it was like go hard for 7 years, make as much money as you can. There were no restrictions, there was no cap, versus how I'm thinking about building my business now is like, I love my business, but I want to love my life more than I love my business.
That's good.
So I'm creating with that in mind, it's like I'm creating for a level of enoughness.
That's great.
Versus it never being enough. I'm building with like a capacity limit in mind. Like I'm building a business that allows me to like work on average 10 to 12 hours a week. Maybe a push week is 15. Because I want, maybe in the next like year and a half, 2 years, I would like to like, give birth. So I'm creating and engineering with that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, I filter all opportunity through, because I don't have an opportunity problem. I filter it through lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like, what do I want my weeks to look like? And if it messes with it, it's just tough.
It's tough.
Just,
and you got 2 kids and a wife. Like
right.
it's I think that, and again, going back to like, what's your owner's intent? Like there's seasons, when I was in that season, like, it never felt burnt out regardless of how much I was working, because like that was everything. Versus now it's like, I'm in a different season. There's different priorities. There's different things that I care about now. And I want my business to be in service to that, not just me only being in service to the business.
Right. That's really good.
Yeah.
So high profit. What do you do to offset taxes?
Well, it depends on how much profit I made in a year. And I moved from Michigan to California. California is disrespectful with taxes. One thing I want to like share with this is that it happened fast.
Yeah.
When you're new money, which I am, like I went from making, you know, 150, then 330, then 850, then like 1.2 million, then 1.5 million. It was year after year after year. So like and then your profit, it was like, okay, $100,000 in profit,
Yeah.
250 in profit, 550 in profit, 800 in profit. This is year after year after year. So like the learning curve is going to be ridiculous. You're probably going to mess up somewhere. The best thing that I would recommend in that case is like, I'd say when you're growing, like when you're shifting brackets that fast, probably every single year you need to be like, have your accountant have a second person reviewing your financials, especially if it's that quick. But if you jump into a new profit, you know, a new tax bracket category, like get an outside opinion, especially if it's your first year doing it. Because my accountant that supported me up to 300,000, their risk tolerance and I feel like their level of tax strategy, like their sophistication level just was not there when I was like profiting 600 or 800 or $1 million in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So like I want to say that. But no, in the beginning, I mean, the first 2 years, it's just, you just throwing out massive tax bills. Cause I'm like tax strategy. I'm like, I'm just shocked that I'm like, how could I owe 6 figures in taxes? This is crazy.
Drake says, now that's 6 figures when they tax me.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess you lose some and win some, long as the outcome is income.
That's
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my first mentors, she was like, I'm like, why is these taxes? What do I do? She's like, make more money.
Boom.
That is it. You just make more money.
That's what Alex Hormozy says, like, rather than trying to like put all your energy and attention toward like, how much can I save? Just focus on how much.
I mean, honestly, like after a point, you start to realize, I think too, like why I'm building my business the way that I am now, it's like I'm building it purely through the lens of like, what is my tax bracket, my taxable income going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And how much revenue do I even need to make? Like you might realize you only need a $500,000 business, low overhead, but you're taking home $350 to $400 a year. Like I'd rather have $500,000 business operational problems than there's like, I have clients that come to me and they're like, I'm doing 2 million, 3 million a year. I'm taking home 300,000 because how much money they're spending on ads, how big their team is, like they're inflated in certain areas. And it's like, that's why I'm saying like, know what problem you want to solve,
right? And
what the end goal is. On paper, like, oh, that $3 million business looks great. But if you're doing this for a lifestyle business and you're taking home 200,000, like, dude, we probably could set you up making $400,000 a year and taking more home than you are now. Or like descale the business back to $800,000 a year and you're bringing home $500,000 now. And you don't have 15 people you're managing, $100,000 a month you're spending on ads and whatever.
Yeah, I always like to, because again, there's like, this was a quantum leap type of year.
Yeah.
But I have no desire to build this empire. Like I just don't. Yeah.
And maybe seasons will change.
Sure, maybe that will change. Yeah.
I'm like, and I feel like to a lot of the people I used to compare myself with of like the empire builders, they're in their freaking 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They're 45 years old. If they got kids, the kids have already graduated. I'm like, I think that when they're personal brands, and I'm like, Jay, who are you? Like, girl, you just turned 34. Like, calm down. Like, you might get to a season of life where that matters, Yeah. But I think dialing into what's important now is here. Going back to your question of like what to do with taxes, I think probably something that's applicable for anybody. Look into the Augusta rule. Mm-hmm. That probably saves you like $15,000 a year in taxes. It's where you're able to like write off a portion of like your home.
It's like 14 grand a year.
Something like that.
You rent your space to yourself.
Yeah. That's like I feel like anybody listening can do that.
And we have a couple tax stuff. I just wondered like where your mind, and I just wanted your mind on it. And your mind on it was like, the tax bracket thing is actually cool.
My best investment is my business. There is no other investment vehicle that will throw off the type of margins that my business will throw off.
That's good.
So I'm like, you can't, drug dealers don't make the profit margins that we make in the coaching space. Like, and not saying we're about to start moving weight, but I'm just saying like, even in that game, like so just know what is I think that we forget that your business is an investment.
Yeah.
And if you're like doing 30% this year, how can you grow to 50% or 35% or 40%? Like the stock market isn't even going to give you those types of returns.
Right.
So
it's really good.
That's where I'm at now. Like my investment philosophy is just manage my margins And then how I reduce taxes. I mean, like I'm doing like normal people stuff, like put it in the 401k, put some stuff in the stock market, decide how active you want to be in investing beyond the active and role that you're currently playing as a business owner. And then just like I had to just realize that tax is just part of the game.
Yeah.
So make enough where your taxable income matches what you want to take home. And, you know, that's part of how you contribute to society. These public schools, these roles, these policemen. And, you know, it's made me a little bit more political than I was before. But it's like, you know, the taxes that I pay, honestly, are a lot of the resources that many of my family members rely on from the government. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's just what it is. And that's just part of the game. And
love it.
Save your taxes so you can pay Uncle Sam without any pressure every year.
Great. Last, I would like to kind of unpack you now have a profit share model.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like now you don't have necessarily a hard rate to work with you.
We give people options.
Yeah,
but
okay.
like, yeah, this year, because I'm doing like a lot more of strategic advisory, private one-on-one. And I'm doing a revenue share model with clients where they pay a lower base monthly rate, and then I get 10% of new revenue that we make together. And the reason why I did that is because of my track record. To be quite honest, I have dozens of millionaires that I've helped coach and create over the years. And it's a risk tolerance that feels very comfortable for me because I know what the returns are going to be. I have very high confidence in knowing how to properly qualify a lead. I've worked with thousands of people over the years. I have like a pretty good picker of knowing like this, I can kind of, still somewhat of a gamble. You don't fully know, but like, and life happens to people, but I feel confident in that arena. But it's a way for me to still have a level of scalability without me like building the traditional scalable model.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I worked with a company this year that would like, they had a flat fee to start. Mm-hmm. And then it was a percentage for 3 like challenges that I did. And they helped me get past that line. I just ended that contract right now. We're going to see cause like at this point it's like maintaining.
Yeah.
And so I need to have that conversation, but I mean, seeing how much I paid them, I'm like, good on you. That's great.
And I think too, in the coaching space, since it's not regulated, and going back to what you said earlier, a lot of people have been burned. Like I've paid, $80,000 to $100,000 for a coach, and it felt very one-sided. And it's like versus like I want this, especially when I know the type of coach I am though. Like I don't do just traditional coaching. I'm very hands-on. And I think I offer, I kind of jump between the roles of like consultancy, advisory, and coaching very much.
Wow.
So a lot of what I do with clients like has a very direct impact on their revenue growth. So it's something I'm experimenting with. Like I've been in, back working with clients, like I said, now for maybe like 5 months or so. And we'll see, like, I've been presenting both options where they can pay a flat fee or they can do the revenue share model. Clients have taken me up on both. Clients that know they'll make more than what I'm charging flat fee normally go with the flat fee. It's a good juxtaposition though, what you mentioned earlier. They're like, I'll pay the flat fee or 10%. I think I'm going to make more in doing, than what this flat fee is. So it makes the flat fee very like easy, no brainer. And I'm in a season of life where like, I know what my enough numbers is.
Yeah.
Like, could I milk and get more money? Sure. But like,
whatever.
The flat fee is enough. And like, pressures are low. Like, let's just make some money and have a good time. And
so good.
That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Dang, you having fun coaching.
I'm having fun. Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah, so good. How can people connect with you? Where people can find you?
Yeah. Well, I do have a podcast. It's called Jereshia Said.
Which I love.
Thank you.
Which I'm a fan of.
Woo woo. So I've been producing those in seasons. You can listen on Apple Tunes or Spotify. But what I love is if they've listened to this, like tag me on Instagram. I'm at Jereshia Hawk. And like, let's continue the conversation. Let us know you're listening. Send me a DM. I check all my DMs now. But yeah, Instagram's probably the best place to continue the conversation and to go deeper. Check out the podcast. So
good. Instagram for coaches. Like, how important is Instagram versus any other platform?
I think the nice thing I love about Instagram is the multitude of the real estate on there. Like you can get reach on there. You can go depth of consumption through lives and through carousels. You can have intimate conversations in the DMs. You can build and nurture relationships in the stories. Like I feel like there's very few other platforms that do all in one.
Yeah.
There's one-way dialogue and there's enough natural, native, two-way dialogue on there. Instagram, I mean, I love Instagram. I tested out TikTok. I don't think I don't meet, it's just the culture is not, I can't create on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you gotta pick a place where people can see you, hear your voice, see your body language and whatever that is. But I mean, Instagram, it ain't going nowhere. Well, I don't even know if TikTok what's going to happen with all these bans or whatever.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Thank you so much. This was an honor. This was a true masterclass. I actually, like, one of my objectives with podcasts, if I can do it, is to put out the best conversation around a thing. And I feel like we just accomplished the greatest conversation around starting a coaching business.
Well, thank you. Thank you for leading the conversation. You make it so natural. Like I keep forgetting the cameras are here.
Good. All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.